Today we just finished doing some hands-on training with the machines. Men versus machine is the key here, okay? What a lot of us find ourselves doing is we tend to find ourselves in a mindset where I'm the professional counter. I'm gonna sit here and do this. I'm just gonna have you do so many repetitions, 10 to 12 repetitions, or whatever it is that you wanna do. What I'm gonna show you guys today is a different method that I want you to look at it, a completely different way of actually training within the machines, okay? Within the trenches, you find yourselves basically standing off around here, whatever it is, kind of leaning over. You know, that's the shade trainer that really don't want to get into. What I want to show you guys is how to actually make it so that way we're more dynamic within our training, more engaged, more laser vision, if you will. So for example, what a lot of us find ourselves doing is doing that tricep extension like this. You know, going out here doing that tricep extension or going that ropes going through the motions. What I want to talk about is the motions of the triceps, okay? Motions they're responsible for the tricep extension, but they're also responsible, what a lot of us do tend to forget when we're doing an applied session, is that hyperextension movement. So when we apply the hyperextension movement into the actual training style, it adds an extra little dynamic. So if I'm sitting here, popping on in here, setting up the resistance that I want, right now I've got about 40 pounds on this, not that much weight. The normal way that you tend to do it is you just go through the motions. You just kind of set your triceps up against the pad here. That's the cliche thing. That's what I consider to be the wrong way to do it. You want to get more bang for your buck out of this movement here. So here's the key to this. What you want to focus on is the same movement as though you're doing a full tricep hyperextension. That's the idea here. So you're going to visualize yourself actually going through that full tricep hyperextension. You're going to set your arm on the pad and push back as hard as you can. Before you even start pressing the movement, that's going to engage those muscles that are going towards that full tricep hyperextension. That's what we're focusing on here, okay? So if I'm here and I get myself in position, I'm going to the full tricep hyperextension, right away I feel myself working. It's more of a just working on stabilization, but at the same time I'm also working on really pushing back. So when I'm going through the motions, actually going through that full hyperextension, through that full extension here, I'm also including the hyperextension, so I'm getting more bang for my buck out of that movement there. So key to this is pushing back. Isometric position, pushing back as hard as you can. Your body doesn't know the difference whether you're already pushing back or not. Full hyperextension, adding that extension into it, so it makes me work that much harder. It's incorporating my abdominals as well as that hyperextension movement and that forward extension, if you will. So in a sense, that's in a nutshell how you can actually break down the full hyperextension movement into a full extension movement. You as a trainer can apply the hands-on training into this. Apply that hands-on resistance. So as a trainer, I can apply resistance here. As somebody's going through the motions, I can apply resistance upward from here with my hand, okay? Obviously you want to stay away from the moving object, but what you remember here is that focal point. If you have a focal point here, the closer you are to a lever, or to the focal point, the less resistance you can apply when you're applying resistance into something. So if I go out here and I put pressure here, it's going to feel 2 to 3 times more when I'm the person actually doing the tricep extension. In a nutshell, that's what the way that I would recommend to do the full tricep extension as a fitness professional. Most of the machines that we look at here, they go into just a standard movement. You want to think 3D training here. Now, when we do a pressing movement, we do a bench press movement here, get yourself situated, I'm going through the motions, I'm working my chest, if you will, right? But one thing we do tend to forget is that our chest is not mainly made to do this movement here. It's also made to basically cause that adducting movement. If you were to put your hand here and bring your arm across your body, you can feel that chest being contracted, okay? If you go even further past that point, past that midpoint, you're able to utilize that muscle that much more by bringing it across. So how does that apply into this? How can we make it into a 3D workout? Let's take a look at this here. So we sit down here, once again applying that isometric position, sitting yourself down here, your chest is up, shoulders are back, pressing forward, but when you're pressing, you're also including that inward movement. That inward movement is key because now you're forcing that chest to work that much more. And whatever weight you were using, if you're strong enough to use the whole rack, trust me, you won't be doing the full rack if you're putting that full inward movement when you go through the movement. So if you're going with 50 pounds going through the movement here, you should be already shaking before you even start pressing the weight forward because you're applying that isometric position into it. So you're killing two birds with one stone with this movement here. forward but pressing in at the same time. That's the key to this movement here. So the next step is just your standard row position here. This machine, you can see it in most clubs, okay? Now, as a fitness professional, you tend to find yourself using this very often. I'm sure everybody does. Everybody's comfortable with the row, but I'm gonna show you guys how to use this machine in a more dynamic way, if you will. A more dynamic way to actually go about doing this. Now, what I wanna talk about is a common mistake that we tend to do as trainers, okay? Let's say we did the setting a little bit further back than we wanted it to be. A little bit further back, the person is fairly short, they sit down and they can't really reach forward. If that's the case, what do you usually do in that situation? You probably stand up, have them stand up a little bit, switch over, okay, let me just change this down a little bit, right? Change the setting. That's usually the plan of action there. But we're changing it up a little bit today, okay? Think outside the box. If that's the case, if you messed up, there's no reason why you should be stopping what you're doing and losing value within your session. You don't want to lose that valuable time while you're training. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to come here and you're going to support this forward, hand it to them. Now they're ready to rock and roll, going through the motions. How do you teach somebody to actually do an actual rowing move, a seated row, okay? You're probably going to be nodding to this one here because of the fact that you may have actually encountered this problem before. If you find somebody doing an actual seated row or any kind of row or whatever it is where you want to bring those shoulder blades back together, you usually want to cue somebody, bring those shoulder blades together or squeeze that back as much as you can, and you just cannot understand why the client may not be able to understand what you're saying. How do you do it, right? So simply have your client put their hand on your back right around here. You're doing the movement. So place your hand, open hand behind my back, and you're gonna apply the kinesthetic version of teaching. How do people learn how to do anything? Kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. That's the main idea here. So if I'm here, I have them put their palm open on the back of my back. If I'm bringing this back here, this is the wrong way to do it, right? Because I'm not bringing my shoulder blades together. So I'm gonna tell them, this is the wrong way to do it. This is what I don't want you to do. So what I want you to focus on, this is the right way to do it. I want you to squeeze those shoulder blades together when you're going through that movement. Squeeze those shoulder blades together, that's the key. So the beauty about that is they get to experience what it feels like to actually go through that movement, to actually see what it looks like, they feel what it looks like. So when you tell them later on, I want you to squeeze those shoulder blades together, they're completely gonna understand what you're saying. The other dynamic of this machine where you can make it 3D training, if you will, is apply resistance with it, okay? Apply hands-on resistance. Anybody can do a row, but it's not gonna make it a dynamic workout. You're gonna be the on the sideline trainer doing this, counting 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You weren't certified to be a professional counter. So I'm gonna show you how to actually apply a form of training that makes it one-on-one, makes it individualized, makes you have that laser vision with that client. So you're here, gonna hand it forward, like I said earlier, if it's too far forward, they're gonna be going through the movement. So you see what I'm doing? I'm doing that thumb here. Now in the case that they're going through the movement, I can basically pull this lever back. Here's my focal point right up here. The further away from this focal point, down here, the more resistance I can apply when I'm pulling this way, correct? So if he or she is pulling back, doing that seated row, I can apply resistance back here. Even though it's 10 pounds, I can apply that resistance here. So that way they're able to receive that resistance over there. I can always add or decrease resistance. If I pull back, I'm adding resistance. If I'm pushing forward here, I'm decreasing the resistance. So I can either spot or add resistance into the movement, okay? So here's where we're applying this movement. They're going through the motions. I'm pulling back with this finger here. I can also go into this position here. I can coach them through the process. I can have them squeeze their shoulder blades together. I'm engaged, but I'm always keeping this hand here. If they can't continue, no worries. If it's too easy, I can push that thumb forward and allow them to continue working that much harder, okay? So I can basically transition from here to back here and always being engaged, always applying my undivided attention to my client. Laser vision is key. All right, so one of the things that I've actually missed out on a few times is when you walk up to a machine, you got about 10 seconds to make a decision as to how you're gonna set it up. When you're walking up to the machine, you're thinking as a fitness professional, how do I wanna set this up? I wanna set the baseline, okay? Baseline measurement, baseline height, baseline settings on everything that I'm doing. So if I'm 5'9", so if I have somebody that's, you know, 6 foot, 6'3", 6'4", obviously the seat would be that much further back here. So I gotta find a way to basically set the setting for my client within about 10 to 15 seconds. So understand your settings as to how the seat should be set up, how the leggings should be set up, all that good stuff. The resistance here, that should all be set up. Now guys, one thing to remember is when you're doing any form of 3D training, when it comes to machine training, is it's always better to go lower than higher, okay? Why? Because you always have the option of using these magical things that were given to you, all right? So in this case, let's say I have my invisible individual here sitting down, right? I set them down, I get it all set up, put it on their thighs, got all the measurements all set up. What I want to focus on here is I'm going to get at the level of the client, so that way I'm able to look at them as I go through the motion, and I'm going to teach them how to bring this pad to this bottom section here, okay? Now, the full range of the movement here, it's going to get results, but what I want to do with 3D training is basically allow them the opportunity to keep that muscle contracted throughout the full motion. So I'm never going to allow them to fully extend that leg up because I want to keep that hamstring working. I've got 30 minutes to get the results, so I better take advantage of that time. So what I'm doing is I'm basically, if they're pushing this way, I'm going to apply pressure on the pad this way, so I'm adding more resistance to it. Okay? Now, this machine here, you don't need to add a lot of resistance because the hamstrings, once you get to this point here, it gets a lot harder to actually do the movement here. So, if they're going through the movement, going through that leg curl, this is the leg curl here, right? I can apply resistance with this hand on the pad as they're going through the motions. I'm giving them a visual with this hand here, so this is their foot. I'm giving them a visual to basically bring their foot up to the seat as you're going through the motions, but I'm also applying that hands-on resistance. The hands-on training is going to be the key to this. While I'm doing this, I can also coach them through the process. I'm at their level, my hips are facing the direction, and I'm making it a 3D training style type of movement. Okay? Next time they do this machine, they can do the leg curls as much as they want, but it's never going to be the same as though it was when they were training with you. Raises, why not, right? So we got the lateral raises here. This is one of the most used machines in the facility. A lot of you boys, ladies tend to use it. You want to work on the shoulders, the medial deltoids, the anterior deltoids, all that good stuff. But how can we think 3D training in this machine here so that way we're using that posterior section in our back? The rhomboid area, the posterior deltoid, all that good stuff, right? How can we make it happen? So I'll tell you what. You're going to sit down on the machine just like you would. I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it. Okay? So the wrong way to do it, if you look at the handles here for a second, the handles are forward. Almost every single facility has basically the exact same model that we have here. If the handles are forward, okay, I'm just going through the movements. I'm bringing those arms out, medial deltoid, anterior deltoid being fired when I'm going through the movement, right? Simple enough. But what do I have to do later on to work on that posterior aspect? I have to go and do another full movement. That's going to be another 20 minutes of my time. Why not kill two birds with one stone and do some 3D training on this bad boy? So what you're going to do, why not use what this is made for? Pull this back. So go ahead and pop over here so you can see what's going on here. So if I'm going through the movement here, facing this way, you can see that I'm just working the anterior part. But if I do what I was just talking about, pull this lever back here, now I'm using that posterior section, going through that movement, and that weight that I was using earlier, is now that much more because I'm applying that retraction into that shoulder blade. So I'm pulling this back, squeezing those shoulder blades together into position, right? I can change it up a little bit, make it unilateral if I want to, but I'm always focusing on bringing that shoulder blade back. So it adds two different things. It allows my focus to basically increase on bringing those shoulder blades back, and it's also increasing the feeling that the resistance is going up because I'm applying another muscle group that I wasn't thinking of using when I was using this machine. 3D training, guys. 3D training is the key.